Warning, the following episode of the Blackwell podcast contains spoilers from all episodes of Life is Strange.
Hi, and welcome to the Blackwell podcast, where we love Life is Strange more than Brooke loves Warren. We are joined here today with none other than Christian Devine, who is the writer for Life is Strange, one of the lead writers. Hi, Christian.
Hey, how are you?
Great. And then, of course, we have Jamie and Jess, as always.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, Jamie and Jess.
So, why don't we just start right off? Christian, why don't you, if you would, give us a short introduction of who you are and what you did with Life is Strange?
Okay, sure. My name is Christian Devine, and I'm a writer. And it's such a tricky question to always kind of do a little mini bio of yourself. But basically, long story short, is that I've been a writer for many years and started, I would say, professionally writing, selling interviews to magazines, and then went to UC Berkeley as a film major and really made a focus on writing, on screenwriting particularly, all kinds of writing, but made my focus screenwriting because, I was making short films and filmmaking, and, that kind of world is more. I like the idea of teamwork, and I like films and games because you're part of a team and there's much more collaboration. And writing is a very lonely, by yourself thing to do. So the flip side of the writing for media is that you get to work with people after you're writing and while you're writing, so you get to kind of balance that out. So at Berkeley, I was focusing on writing scripts and making short films, and I ended up teaching classes at Berkeley because I'm also a very strong believer in teaching history about media, about cultural history, about films and art, to kind of place things in a cultural context, because that's how you learn from it, and also how you don't judge it so harshly. If, for instance, if I show a silent film, people may you could laugh at it and not accept it. But if you get a little bit of historical, cultural context, you don't act superior to the time, and then you can actually appreciate it and for the art that it is. So teaching is very important to me too on the side. But at the time I was writing, and then Hollywood started. I got an agent while I was at Berkeley, and then I started getting some attention from Hollywood. And then my friend John Romero had started his company Ion Storm in Texas. And you know who John Romero is, right? Do I need to give a little background on John Romero?
Just a short little background.
Yeah, John Romero basically is one of the creators of Doom and Quake, and certainly, is one of the people responsible for the first person shooter, kind of phenomenon, and and also one of the designers on Wolfenstein. So, and I grew up with John. And we had very similar, we play games, but John was much more, he had the technical ability. I have zero, technical ability when it comes to programming, and it's a different thought process, a different instinct, and I can do minor bits of coding, but it's a different brain function, and John had it, And so once he became successful with Doom and Quake, he started his own company, and then he hired me to write for the game Daikatana that he was working on. And so I moved to Texas for a few years to write for John at Ion Storm, which was amazing. And then Warren Spector from the Austin office hired me to work on Deus Ex. And that was another, obviously, treat. And from there, then I got more interest in Hollywood for some scripts and decided to take the plunge and move officially to Hollywood, where I spent years in the trenches selling scripts and writing for people and writing games and everything that a writer does in Hollywood. Then I have, a lot of scripts. You always get scripts almost made. There's many, you get paid for more things that actually get made in Hollywood. That's a funny thing. You option stuff, they buy stuff, but it's very hard to make things. It's very hard to get a movie made. It's hard to get a game made. It's actually it's almost kind of a miracle that anything gets made when you see what you're up against. And when you realize the competition and the talent and, how much there is and how many things can go wrong, it's just so many things seemingly working against you for anything. So it's really impossible to get things done, but they do. And so then I have a script in pre-production, a trucker script set in the 70s, a female trucker script. And then I left LA to come back to Northern California. And at a certain point, my friend, French writer named David Calvo, a very famous French writer and game designer, he had interviewed me for a press conference for Deus Ex in France, and we became, very close friends. And he's like my French soul brother. And he recommended me to Dontnod when he heard that they were looking for a writer for Life is Strange. And he said, you have to hire Christian Devine. That's what's good about having a French cheerleader for your work does. It's very important. Very important. You can tell people how great you are all the time, but it's much more important for other people to tell other people. And so I submitted some scripts to Michelle and Raul, and they knew, my work from, they knew I had Deus Ex is a nice, credit to have. And even Daikatana, though it wasn't a success, is, it's still part of the game world. And however a game turns out, there's an enormous amount of work involved and enormous amount of talent and people that are really, really trying to work hard. So, it's a very tough industry to get into, and it's a very, we'll talk more about that later. But long story short is that I took a test for the game. You generally, for game companies, people may not know this, but you generally have to do some kind of writing test for most companies because they have certain guidelines they need to see that you can fulfill. And so, and I took the test, and the tests are usually not very fun and not always representative of what you can do as a writer, but this one felt it. There was a test that wasn't ever not a test. It was this one. It was only because it was just so much playing to what I perceived to be my strengths, and in terms of what the writing was, and the kind of level of dialogue that it looked like the game was going to involve. And then when they sent over a little bit of the clip, from the game, some of the mocap stuff they had, and the first thing I saw in the game was literally the menu, that opening, that little bit of, and when you hear that music and an opening, I think pretty much everybody, it doesn't matter really who you are, I think like, this is different. This is something special, and the second that I heard that music, I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is the kind of game that I've been dying to write for, and then when I saw the first scene they sent over was, the Chloe Max scene in the bedroom done a little bit differently, with the subtitles. And it was just so cool and so fresh and unique, and, female characters and, honesty and just beautiful lighting, and the style of the art was, clearly going for something not real, but slightly DIY surreal, and playing to the strengths of a non-AAA game. And so I was so excited. And so I took the test, and, it's very rare that you get one thing. Like I said, I like to be honest about this with people who are interested in writing. I'm speaking to people, artists or writers too, is that you have to get used to an enormous amount of rejection. You're not going to go forward without many people saying no to you. That's the nature of the beast. It happens to every single person that does it. Everybody who's made it has been rejected many times, and that's part of it. And you have to develop whatever it is that you need to develop to deal with that. And so, but in this case, I don't rarely feel confident about, like, oh yeah, I got this. I just learned years ago to not feel that way. The universe will laugh at you if sometimes when you get that moxie. So it just felt right. Everything felt right. And and then I had a Skype meeting with Luke, the producer, and Michelle and Raul, and it went great. And, we all clicked, and, I got the magic message, inviting me to write for the game. And, it's one of the greatest moments of my life, absolutely. And So that's long story short, or short story long. That's how I got.
Well, that is awesome.
Okay, yeah. So, and then it's so the way life. I mean, life is strange. I mean, life really is strange. I mean, I was one day, just working on the computer doing some writing, and then 2.5 weeks later, I'm flying to Paris to work on this amazing game. So life is strange. That's all I got. It's amazing, and it is amazing. And I was so happy to get this opportunity because, like I said, it's very this type of game is rare, and I don't think it will be rare anymore, though. And that's why I was so excited about working on it, because I could see that they were heading in a direction of where I thought games should be going a long time ago, and where I wish they would be going. And I always, there's always evolution with everything. Games will develop, they will evolve. And we're at a really wonderful golden age right now of storytelling in games, and also where all the rules are being broken. And so many new people and faces and diversity are coming into the game world, as it should be. You have to evolve. You have to do that. That has to happen. So does that answer your question? Is that a long-winded way of who I am and how I got involved with Deus Ex? I mean, for Life is Strange.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That was standing ovation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be a movie.
Sometimes, you have to look at life dramatically sometimes in order to get through it. I found that a long time ago. Sometimes if you place things in this context of, struggle and drama, it's kind of this epic struggle, you can get through it. You can get through rejection a lot too, because you have, like I said, if you're a writer or any kind of artist, you deal with a lot of rejection, and you deal with, a lot of like soul searching, and it's not an easy path. And the game does, I think Life is Strange, what I love about it is it does touch upon these issues, and not only aesthetic issues, but it goes into obviously social issues, which are very, very rare in a game. And I was really surprised, honestly, by how far, Michelle and Raul and the team were willing to go with the game. I was honestly like, wow, you're going to go here. Okay, let's do this. Okay, this is great. This is going to be different. And, you have to be smart, and you have to be sensitive, and you have to be, careful, with a lot of these kind of issues that we're exploring. But I think everybody's, Donut and Square Enix and the team, and everybody is so, on the same page with this, and everybody's coming from a place of like, how can we do this the right way? So, and seemingly, and judging by the fan base and the reaction to the game, it seems like people are responding, which is just, like I said, overwhelming, really amazing.
Right. It seems like, you and Don't Nod and all that really like pushing the envelope with it, and really, really wanting to push the envelope without it being like, just for lack of a better word, cheesy feeling,
Forced.
Right. It's tackling these issues that aren't tackled in video games. I mean, we're not seeing this, grizzled old white man fighting demons anymore, so it is really refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you all three? I'm just curious, when you first played the game, was it just on a whim? You downloaded it and played it? What was your response when you first to the first episode? When did you feel like this game was something different? What was that moment for you guys? I'm curious.
For me, it was pretty much like what you said. Like my friend said, there's a demo up for this game. You should probably download it, see what it's like, because they know I'm a huge fan of episodic games. So like you said, with the menu, it's like I knew this is going to be a good game just by the overall atmosphere, just from the main menu. And yeah, quickly, like episode 1 just shot up to be one of my favorite games I've ever played.
Great, that's awesome. Jess, what about you?
Well, for me, I'm not a huge gamer. I wasn't before this. I am pretty big now with gaming, but I was watching a playthrough of from a YouTuber. His name is Joey Graceffa, and I watching him. So it was, I think, episode 3. I decided, oh, maybe I should try this out. It looks really good. And I've never done that before because, again, I wasn't a huge gamer at the time. So, yeah, episode 3, the end of that was when it kind of, like, I know it took a while, but I was there.
That's fine. It's
yeah.
Jamie, what about you?
I came into it a little bit late as well. It was about maybe a week or 2 weeks before episode 4 came out when I actually got it. It was on Steam Summer Sale, and it was one of those things that I kind of I'd put on the back burner. I was interested in it from seeing the trailer early on back in January, but then just for whatever reason kind of forgot about it. And so I was like, okay, well, now's a good time to get this. Definitely the first thing that like stood out to me was just the aesthetics of it. Like right away was just, it's so, I don't know, it's so like visually pleasing. Just right. The art style and the cinematography and just, it's, I don't know how to put it in words. It's like playing a movie, essentially. Like
that's a great way to put it. I mean, that's really what it is. So, and I'm glad that once again, that everybody really responded to the beautiful, style, visual, and accepted it as not being a AAA. The trick about the game is that, and it's what I tell people, like if you don't have any money or you don't have a lot of money, you can't compete, with a lot of people. But so you have to make this is a Bruce Lee quotation, make your disadvantage your advantage. Take whatever it is that may be working against you and use that. If you don't have money, don't act like you do. Make it lo-fi. And that's what I love about Life is Strange, is that it's lo-fi, and it's supposed to be. Not everything has to have a realistic graphic look. It's like art has many different styles, and this game, and a game like Oxenfree is beautiful. You've got all these new, you can have many different graphic styles and not have to compete with, $100 million mocap, budget and everything. So I think, for people that are, want to be, writing games or want to, creating games, just start small, but you can, there's really no excuse for anybody to not do things themselves now. The technology is too accessible. Everybody can start doing, whatever they can with the tools that are pretty freely available. But that's why I think Life is Strange is great, because I think it'll inspire more and more games, to push these boundaries and not worry so much about the budget or the conventions of gaming. And honestly, I mean, the fact is when I game, what I often really want to do is I want to run around and destroy Nazi robots. That's what I want to cut the heads off zombies. That's what I want to do, and there's other times when I want to have a really immersive narrative experience, or I want to have an Alan Wake experience, or, so it's like movies or music. You don't just listen to one kind of music, or you don't watch just one kind of movie. I hope you don't, because you're limiting yourself to what's out there. And especially if you're going to be Alejandro on the broadcast, you got an interview you did with him last week. He said some really important things, and one of them was live a life, have a life. If you're going to be an artist or a game maker, you've got to have something to talk about. You've got to have something to discuss, and so you've got to interact with the world in order to gain this experience or knowledge. Right. So I think that's the key thing, and especially from a writing perspective. Programmers, not necessarily. God bless them, because they have to be. Programmers are amazing to me. I'm always just they're incredible to me. So what they do is just so amazing, and they really have to be seen in front of that machine to do the brilliance they do. So, but for certain various things, it requires artistically, I think you have to meet up with life halfway, and that's where you'll get. You hear dialogue. I mean, that's honestly some of the best dialogue ever. You overhear it, in a coffee shop, and, the word hella comes, I grew up with, hella is a very old, expression in the West Coast and Pacific Northwest and Northern California, but not Southern California. So if you say hella in Southern California, their skulls will break from their eyes rolling back into it. And they will know immediately that you are an outsider. If you say hell there. And so, but I noticed a couple years ago, I started hearing it again. I was like, that's so funny, that word, that people are saying it. I just noticed around me like people were, and I thought that would be, and then when the game came up, it seemed like the perfect kind of phrase, word to give Chloe, to give, a character. And that's something that you kind of, when you're writing for games or movies or anything, or books or whatever, you have to, establish characters somehow, and language and is one way you do that. Appearance and behavior, but also what they say and what they don't say.
Right.
So I have a giant void there for that, but do you want to go follow up? Do you have a question? I mean, do you want me to?
Just trying to that is such a great response. Just trying to kind of wrap my head around everything.
Sure. But I noticed, it's like, but you have one of the questions you guys, you said, what got me interested in writing, right? Was films as a kid. I mean, the thing is, I was very lucky, and probably like a few people out there, I've always known exactly what I wanted to do. There was never any question in my mind that I wanted to be a filmmaker or be a writer or I wanted to be part of creating art, when I was a kid, film or games or books. I wanted to be a part of that. So I always knew what I wanted to do. And so you gravitate towards writing if you're interested in writing. And as a kid, I would read young adult books. Judy Blume books were a big influence, her young adult books, because they were so controversial. Are you familiar with Judy Blume? Do you know who she is?
I know who she is.
Yeah, I used to read that when I was younger.
Yeah, everybody does. So if you don't know who Judy Blume is, she's a famous, she's the most famous, I would say, YA author in America for sure, and the most influential, because she wrote the first books for teenagers and younger people that really dealt with the serious issues that they had to deal with. And one of her famous books is a book called Flubber, about a girl who's mocked for her weight at school. And it's a brutal, cruel book that still is incredibly relevant, and young people still read today, because the culture may change, for sure, but the cruelty and the emotions and the bullying, that's pretty consistent. And but Judy Blume was a big influence on me, because I was like, wow, you can really write about this stuff as for teenagers and young people, and then my brother got me a copy of Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, and that really blew my mind open, because I love his writing was so poetic. And it wasn't, I'm not big on hardcore science fiction. I read the hardcore science fiction writers growing up, and I'm not so technically interested in the science. I'm more interested in the fiction. And Ray Bradbury's science is zero. A rocket ship flies to the moon and lands. That's the science. But it's about what happens when you land on Mars, and this, and the writing and how he perceives the world. So Bradbury was a big influence. And then Harlan Ellison. Are you familiar with Harlan Ellison? He's a very famous, probably the godfather of cyberpunk in a way. Very famous author from started out in the 60s, and very controversial. He wrote the most famous episode of Star Trek that's referenced in Life is Strange, which is The City on the Edge of Forever. And very famous writer, and he's influenced many things, and he's credited on the Terminator film because James Cameron borrowed one of his plots for the Terminator, and Cameron had to pay up later for that. But he is credited on the Terminator. But Ellison, just because he's a very outspoken, ballsy, like just in your face, kind of, often controversial, but he just says what he thinks, and very active politically too. And it's very important for him to be politically active and committed to the social community, which he is. Writers like the Beats, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, huge influences. Poetry, Robert Blake, all the romantics. I consider myself kind of neo-romantic, writing style. Screenwriters, Paddy Chayefsky, very famous screenwriter who wrote my favorite script of all time for a movie called Network, which really, if you watch Network, which was made in the 70s, it's basically about how the TV news has to sell out to reality TV that's taking over the network. And this is written in the 70s, before reality TV. So the script is actually incredibly prescient. But he had a very famous phrase go into public usage, as one of the characters say, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." Right. And that's the thing, and that came from Network. So it's funny that the screenwriter actually came up with this phrase that has become a very common expression that you may not know, even know the root of where it came from. but it kind of shows you the power of writing and the power of these words. And that was a meme in the 70s. Yeah, that would be a meme. Tarantino, of course, absolutely, because he brought like words back to movies. He brought speechifying. I love speechifying. I love characters discussing big issues of life, having these big discussions. And his writing, he made people listen to writing again. Carol Eastman wrote a lot of films in the 70s I love. Joss Whedon, I love his writing, because he really writes wonderful multi-character pieces. The way he pulled off the Avengers is kind of miraculous. The first one, to dance all those characters around and then to make it work. Ursula K. Le Guin, science fiction writer, but more not so, but concerned with other issues. So, and Ayn Rand, one of my favorite writers, even though her politics you should completely ignore. But but every dialogue writing, anybody who writes can learn something from her dialogue writing because it's so terse and curt, and it's bop, 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 back and forth like David Mamet. It's got a wonderful rhythm to it. And so those are the influences. There's many more. There's so many more writers. I can just keep thinking and rattling them off. But you kind of intake all these writers, and then eventually you mimic them, and then you find your voice. And that's the most important thing for a writer. Pretty much is to find your voice, because what makes you different than everybody else is your voice, and that's the most important thing you have. It's not that all the other things you can learn. It's a craft, but you have to have a voice that's your own, and that will separate you from everybody else, because nobody thinks like you, nobody talks like you. So that's the most important instrument to develop, is your own voice, and to be secure in that. And that's actually what makes people listen to you and stand out in writing, is when it sounds different. That's why Tarantino blew up, because nobody was hearing dialogue like this in movies. So it's very important to develop and trust in your voice too. And you have to learn to trust in that as a writer, and that takes you're always insecure about that. That never changes, but you have to kind of develop and work on that. So that's basically, those are my inspirations, writing wise, and aesthetic wise.
So, man, that's so good. I'm going to quote you on some stuff too. I wish like I still had a Facebook, and Facebook quotes were still the cool thing to do.
Taking notes.
Joey?
What's that?
Did you walk away from Facebook?
I did, yeah.
You did. That's bravo. Good for you. That's pretty impressive. I'm too much
Facebook.
Yeah. I'm too much of a big mouth, and I've got to, blab my things to my friends on there. So, but
that's what I use Twitter for now.
Yeah. I think everybody does. But so onward. So what's your next question?
So what was the writing process for each episode of Life is Strange, from storyboard to completion? What was the writing process?
Good question. And basically, the story was written by Jean-Luc Cano, and so the story was very secure, and they had all 5 episodes mapped out, and all the major events planned, and all the major arcs planned. And so when they brought me on, I was able to, we were all able to work together and add things and change some things. Arcadia Bay was originally called Aurora Creek, and for instance, so things like that. And I liked the word. I liked Arcadia because I thought Arcadia, has all these utopian, kind of ambience, and it represents this kind of magical environment. But of course, it's kind of magical Grecian environment. But it also kind of it's deluded. It's a bit ironic because of course Arcadia Bay is hardly serene.
Right.
So basically, we sit there, discuss the characters, discuss arcs and where they're going to go, and Michelle and Raoul would give me like an outline of what scenes needed to be written, And so I would write, like the cinematic scenes. I'd have to write up a script for that, type out like a screenplay script, because that would be acted out by actors and animated. So, and then for the dialogue scenes, Michelle would give me an outline of, say, what's going to happen in the scene, more or less, like how long the characters will be talking for, to give me an idea of how long we can have the dialogue go for. And then I would just start writing that out, and then I'd get another list from Michelle of environmental text they would need, like posters and TVs and all the environmental things you read in the game, all the things you can pick up and see. So there'd be another list of what Michelle wanted and Raul and the team, the designers would want for those scenes. And so it's like there's, it's like 3 or 4 different kinds of writing going on, and it's amazing that it's able to be kept track of, because there's so much of it. Excel does a lot, and so then basically I would write it and then give it back to Michelle and Raul. They would go over it, and Michelle didn't like things. He would, strike things out or say, can we change this or add a suggestion? And I would say, okay, change it, or say, no, or Michelle would say yes. And then, no, actually the thing is, it's fun. I love talking about writing. There's nothing funner than to sit there and discuss these characters and discuss what you're going to do with them. And that's the funnest part, to sit there with everybody and talk about where they're going to go. It's the funnest thing. And so then once Michelle and Raul and the team, they're okay with that, then they give it to the next phase of the artists and the animators and everything. And then, then we go into voice recording, and that's a whole other, area, because you've got to sit there and, sometimes you'll change things based on that, you realize it doesn't sound good sometimes, the dialogue doesn't sound right, or, the actor might have a better way of phrasing something, so you go for that. So it's a long, very collaborative, long process. But that's basically a very short version of from conception to execution. Does that help?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Kind of leads into our next question. How much freedom did you have when writing for every episode?
Well, given that there's there's a story set in place, and you've got to there's arcs you've got to hit, and there's all the choices that you've got to hit, and I had an enormous amount of freedom, and it's really, really, really wonderful amount of freedom, and they trusted me. And one of the reasons they hired me was because I'm American and I know America, and I'm very familiar with the Pacific Northwest also, because I half live up there. I'm always up there, and they knew they wanted to make sure that they got the American idiom and the U right, and they already nailed. I mean, they nailed the art. I mean, design. They already nailed the vibe of Oregon. I mean, they nailed the Pacific Northwest vibe. Just the look and the style. You're already there, and so they'd ask me questions about American customs or American things that just to fix those things or to figure out, suss things out that would be more American and not what would make sense for Americans. So, like I said, I could add to the characters and come up with things. If they didn't like it, they would say no, or they'd change it or whatever. But it was really, an enormous amount of freedom, and allowed me to really have fun with the writing and the dialogue and the text. I love writing the environmental dialogue, the environmental text. That's some of the funnest stuff to write. It's just the posters for the game, Sasquatch hunters, writing things like that. To create texture. And that's what's so brilliant about the game too, is to lay in all of these interactive pieces, to have texture to the game. And you don't have to look at it if you don't want to, but when you look at it, it just adds that other layer to the game, and it gives you much more of an immersive, world, which, is I think one of the reasons too for why people really respond to the game, because they really feel like they're in that world. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, I had just an enormous amount of freedom, and it was great. You don't always get that as a writer, and so it was really a treat and a blessing.
So you're responsible then for one of the greatest mysteries of all time, is the cat pics, I take it, and the
Yes.
tablet with the stolen cat pictures.
Yes, but I'm not going to tell you who.
Remains a mystery.
Yes, and that's one of the fun things. And and Michelle's like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's do that. Let's add. So it's like fun. You come up with something, and then everybody's on board with it. And anything that you can do to kind of create too, little bits of these kind of narrative hooks, even if they're not important to the main storyline, are fun. And they add to the fictive world that you're trying to create. So you can discover them, have fun with it, or you cannot discover it, and then and doesn't mean anything. But I love and everybody on the team has little Easter eggs they put in, or things they want to tribute. We all want to tribute our various influences, and we wear them on our sleeves a bit. But that's the fun thing too. To me, like the greatest thing about writing for the game was like, oh, I finally get to write that John Hughes, Stephen King, David Lynch hybrid, and so it's fun for, to incorporate these influences and cultural influences into the game. And by the way, I should also mention that Stephen King was a huge influence on my writing, of course. Stephen King is a, major influence, for me, particularly his early books, which if you haven't read everything from Carrie all the way up to, say, probably Cujo, you need to just do right now. Start this exactly. His early books are the best because he was young and hungry and broke and living in a trailer with his wife, and so the books all have an amazing raw energy to them, and they're really actually art. They're really artful because they're really about the American psyche. Because Stephen King was the first writer to combine horror with like blue collar worker. So it seems something maybe common now, but when Stephen King did it, people were not doing it. He found the horror in a can of beer that had been accidentally popped, and the redneck's drinking this beer, and then he starts becoming this giant bloated cat eating creature. So it is creepy, but it's actually also a metaphor, But Stephen King was definitely, I think, a big influence too on the game, and the way that he presents supernatural material, combining it with the ordinary. But anyway, so that's next question.
Oh boy,
Jess.
Oh, are we on 8 or
7?
Oh, 7? Oh, okay. So what was the methods on writing the more serious topics within the game?
That's all. I mean, that definitely was a very, that's a major issue with the game, and that's a very sensitive issue. And, the game touches on all these very delicate issues, and you can't, the number one priority for everybody, for Donut, for Square, is to not be exploitive, to treat these issues with the respect that they deserve, and you can't exploit this stuff. And so that was the main thing. You have to first always be kind of looking at what you're doing and making sure that you're being very serious with this, and not, like I said, exploiting is the best word. And but because everybody is very sensitive on the team, and people all have their experiences they bring to the game, and everybody is empathetic that way, it was just lots of discussion, just lots of serious discussion about how we're going to present these things, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And, things like David Mattson, my father served in the military. He served overseas. So I have, a lot of background into growing up as a military brat. I grew up all over America. My dad, my family moved a lot because my dad was in the military, in the Air Force. And so I have I grew up on military bases. So that allowed me to bring a lot of, what I know about military to David Mattson, and hopefully give him a lot more depth than what you usually see in media presentations of veterans, and I love the fact that the characters in the game that are most problematic for people are the ones that people really tend to respond to, even though David is, should not be doing the things he's doing, and that he's got some issues, you empathize with his struggle, because you can see he's trying to reach out to Chloe. He's just not good at it. you know. And so I love seeing, and I love, it's like Kate, usually in a movie or TV show, the religious girl would usually be presented as as a source of, mockery or, making fun of whatever. And in this game, she is not, because Kate isn't judgmental. She's got her beliefs, but she is who she is. And I love the fact that fans respond more to her than anybody, and they love who she is. They love her for who she is, and so, in her suicide attempt, obviously that's a very, once again, you have to present that, very sensitively. And, we've all known people that have had things. I mean, I've lost people to suicide in my life. So I am very empathetic, and I know what it's like to lose somebody to that. And I don't know what it's like to go to the point where Kate goes to, or people do go to. But I'm really so happy that, that the game and Square Enix have put out numbers for people to talk to people if they need help, And so that's one way of addressing these issues. And so, like I said, the thing is to put it in there, but not to be, you also can't be preachy about it. You can't be overly sentimental. It's very, like I said, it's very hard to walk this kind of tightrope. And I'm not saying that we do it, but it's, we try to. And once again, I think just based on the response and so many people and the letters I get from people who are, very depressed or have contemplated suicide, and how this game has helped them. I mean, honestly, there's no better reward. There's nothing better than for somebody to say that this game helped them, in some way, and so if this game only does that, that's it. That's it. But like I said, I think more games will start touching these issues, and, I think that's the great thing about Life is Strange and things like Gone Home and other games, is they're hitting on all these, issues that are really important societally, but that have not been talked about in gaming, for a reason, because the game industry is very young. And that's why, I also tell people, you got to look at the game industry as literally it's almost like the silent film industry of Hollywood, because you had, say, 20 or 30 years of film, before you had silence even becoming a Charlie Chaplin type Hollywood industry. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until the 30s that they got sound. So I think we're at the level where, the technology is all there. There's so many amazing games, but, we're now expanding upon what the idea of a game is, and it doesn't mean the thing is there can be a million types of games. There's no reason there only has to be one. There shouldn't only be one, there should be many, so people have choices. So, hopefully this will lead to a whole bunch of games where people are able to put more politically charged and social issues along with, the fun and the adventure of gaming.
Right. Give people, a voice that in games, in media, in this new media that's, very chic right now as well. Finally, it's, there's the nerd chic that is present. So yeah, it gives a good opportunity, absolutely, to give a voice to these underrepresented in the media. So that's important, and that's one thing that I just want to say thank you for my own political views and all that. I want to say thank you for handling, and thank you for tackling that very respectfully and very just very well. You guys did good.
Thank you from the team. Thank you, and that's good, because, like I said, it could gone. It can always go another way. You can, things, can be perceived, very differently. You never know how something is going to be perceived, and I'm very glad that people responded and really felt the sincerity of where the game is coming from and the point of view of the game.
Yeah, because I remember back when we interviewed Hannah, she kind of going back onto Kate, she even praised how well written the character of Kate was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Hannah's so amazing. And the actors too, of course, who bring these characters to life. I mean, and you have to give them huge credit for, making you believe in what they're saying and who they are. And And I really find the Kate fandom utterly endearing. That's all I can say. I just find, it just like, how can you, I just love the fact that people are so protective of Kate. And actually, once again, I love the fact that if this game makes people, if some bully plays this game and says, you know what, maybe I shouldn't push that kid in the locker, or maybe I shouldn't do that to that person. I mean, or makes people aware of other people who are being bullied and they feel like they shouldn't be involved. If anything, if it can, that's what I think is most great, is watching and reading the forums and seeing how people discuss these issues and how it reflects in their life. Because, culture, you can't write, what exactly, we can get to this in a second about the, writing for teenagers, but you can't capture the way teenagers talk at any given time, anytime. You can't capture that lightning in a bottle because it moves too fast. And our technology and our culture moves so fast now. A meme is nostalgia the next day. Oh, that meme was so last week, whatever. So it's actually an issue that I think is going to be, that's going to come up in writing a lot more, because so much of language gets coveted immediately by social media or advertising that almost whatever comes out becomes instantly cliche in a way. So it's very hard you cannot, and I certainly would never try to say, okay, this is exactly how teenagers talk now. I'm going to be anthropological writer boy, and I'm going to just, you can't do that. But you start from the point of view that they're characters first. Who are the characters, and that will lead you to how they talk. And the fact is, I don't believe that teenagers talk only one way either. I mean, I'm fairly certain that they don't. I know that, teenagers, when I talk to them, don't talk all the same way. They all have individual voices. So there's no one way for a teenager to talk. There's no one style of speaking. And so within that, you have to kind of develop where you're going to go with that character and what they're going to say, and, how you're going to approach these issues as a character, with the character, how they're going to approach these issues, and etc. So does that help? Does that make sense, I guess?
Yeah.
Definitely. So you're credited as providing the voice for some of the additional, this is a little bit more of a fluffier question, providing some of the additional voices in the game, some of the background characters. What additional voices did you play?
Well, I was originally Max and Chloe and Jefferson. But, I was really bummed out to find they re-recorded it. I demanded. No, I did. I'm Truss Limbaugh, the radio announcer in the car before Nathan's message comes on. He's the talk radio host, screaming.
Oh, okay.
He's based on a very famous American talk show host in America. That was my tribute to him. And some of the voices in the museum, some of the pretentious, complaining voices are mine in the background of the museum. So I love doing, I used to, I direct plays and I've directed shorts, and I love actors so much, and but I do not, and I love the thought of acting, and I love, like doing cameos, and I've done a play, but boy, it's not, it's one of the hardest jobs in the media is to be an actor. And, thank God there's other people that want to do it, like Hannah and Ashley and everybody else. Cause it's really tough, but it's an absolute blast to do, little fun cameos like that.
Yeah. I don't think I could ever do that.
You have a director, you can do it, and, you just have to have somebody bringing it out of you. And, but it's the hardest job next to comedians. Being an actor is the single hardest job in the entertainment industry, because as a writer, you can hide, we can hide everywhere. You don't need to see what we look like or who we are. We can be anywhere, but an actor has got to be front and center, and that's how they get judged. And it's a very, it takes a lot. Even when you're doing voice acting, so it's you got to give props to the cast of Life is Strange, because they nailed it, and it's hard to to do dialogue also for video games. It's not like being in a room full of actors. You're often by yourself, Sometimes like Pixar films, it's not like all the cast is in the room talking to each other. They're often separate, one person talking, saying all their lines in maybe 3 days, by themselves to the director, and then you watch the movie and then you think the character has been with the other characters the whole thing. So, and that's the gift that actors bring to, this kind of role playing, this adventure, game genre.
All right then. Moving on. So Max is known to be an idiosyncratic character, yet malleable enough to make the player feel like they can develop their own personal version of Max. So what were the biggest difficulties to striking that balance towards writing a character?
It's a great question, and that's the trick of the game, because in a way, I mean, you're making Max do things, but at the same time, Max has a personality. And I think one of the the great thing about the game and how the designers approached it is that usually you become the character in a game. If it's a FPS, you're the character. It's happening to you, and you don't have any problems about doing whatever it is you would do. But with Life is Strange, you're suddenly thrust in the position of making decisions based on what you do. And Max may act in a way that's not you, but you start looking at that character as not what would I do, what would Max do? Which I think is really amazing. And so that's tricky right there. You have to there's a fine line between being not a passive character that the player can operate, but has their own definite personality. So I think that's the trick is, and also having Max, Max has to evolve over the course of the game, and she evolves are not kind of based on the decisions the player makes. So, these things, that's the tricky part, is just kind of that tightrope between what the player needs to do and the player feeling that they are influencing the outcome. At the same time, the player is, in Max's world and Max's head and trying to do right by Max. So that's the biggest difficulty right there.
Okay.
All right. So, for the final question, of ours, is to those who want to get into writing, what advice would you give them?
Write. The number one advice is to sit down. And this is honestly, the older I mentor writers and I teach classes, and I'm very, very much a believer in that, you need two things. A, you have to do it alone, and B, you cannot do it alone. You have to sit down and start writing. If you want to be a writer, you have to write. You have to read and experience, and not just read one thing, but read a lot of things. Books you don't even want to read. It won't hurt you. It all helps you. But you have to write, and you have to commit to it, and you can't be half-assed about it. And if you do, there'll be 5 other writers that are going to pass you by, and they're going to be down the road. If that's your goal, is to be published or to be, write for games, you have to produce, and you can't shortcut that process. And the thing about art is that the other thing is there's no guarantees. That's what's sad. I made a decision, when I was 18, I literally said to myself, you are going to be an artist and your life is not going to be easy. You're not going, things are not going to be, you're not going to take the path other people are going to take. And things are going to be feast or famine, and things are going to be difficult. And you won't get rewarded for the work that you do immediately. It's an investment of your time. A lot of times you're writing things that never get made or published. And, I've written, I don't know, dozens of scripts, and so, but every one should be like a building block to something else. And the more you write, the better you get. It's very simple. The more you do anything, the better you get at it. The more you game, the better you get, so you have to perfect your craft. You have to hang around with other writers and artists. I went back to school very late because I despised school. I was a terrible student, and because I was in class, I was in class. I'm in class drawing cartoons and stories, and John Romero is in front of me, and he's writing out sheets of code, and this is when we were 15. And John Romero, by the way, was selling his games when he was 15 to magazines. So, he was already like, John was on the way, so it just shows you that you really have to put in your dues. And I think it's important to be around a community of people that support you. I've been in 2 major writing groups. I've started a writing group, and many of the people in my group are now all published authors. And the screenwriting group that I was in LA, my friend Matt, who started it, created the show Bird Notice. My other friend Jen's book, How to Be a Badass, is on the New York Times bestseller list right now. My producer for my script Carnage, Jamie Paglia, created the show Eureka. But these all people, I saw these people though when they were eating top ramen, So, and my friend Kirker is now a producer on Family Guy, So there's you do have to pay your dues, but it's great to be around people that support you. You can talk about writing or art with, and I do think it's important to go to school or take classes, if only to force yourself to have deadlines. Because the worst thing about writing is that if you don't do it, nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn if you don't write. You have to be the first person to care. You have to make other people care about what you're writing, but you have to do it first, and you have to be committed. And I'll also tell people, you know what? If you don't have the passion for this, don't worry about it. You can still write. You can still love doing it, but don't knock yourself out trying to make a career out of it unless you are crazy enough to do it. Because you have to tell yourself that it's not going to be easy. And I'm just upfront with that because that's the reality of it. But I also truly believe that if you put the effort into it and you do have some talent and some craft, I truly believe that you will get acknowledged. I mean, I just believe that. I've seen it true for myself and my friends and other people. So I do believe that there's a Henry David Thoreau quote, something paraphrasing about, if you move in the direction of the universe will move towards you and work with you. And I really believe that. It doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want, but you certainly will get more than you had before by just putting out the effort. And when I decided to become a writer, and I went back to college and I won a writing contest, and I got to meet Ray Bradbury, and which was an amazing experience. And he's the greatest public speaker I've ever seen. If you ever want to go to YouTube and just watch Ray Bradbury speak, he's just the most amazing, inspiring speaker for a writer ever. And when we were taking photos of the winners of the contest afterwards, I was standing next to Ray Bradbury, and for some reason, he reached out and he grabbed my hand for the photo, and he squeezed it. He just squeezed it so hard, and I felt like I was being given this, blessing from one of my favorite writers of all time.
Wow.
That I grew up with, and so it's but he's a hero and he's a mentor, and we're all walking on the shoulders of giants. And you don't, like I said, you don't do it alone, but you have to do the work alone. But you have to be around people that are going to help you, and you have to share, and you have to pay it forward. And, I think being a writer is a big responsibility, because I think in the society, artists are always important, because it's always the artists that usually tell people what's going on in society first. Because honestly, in totalitarian governments, the first people they put into jail, the first people they kill, the first people they censor, artists, always. That's the first thing that happens they look for in the government.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the loudmouth? It's usually the artists, musicians, writers, the poets, or whatever. So yeah, but my advice is that if you believe in it, if you want to do this thing, you're going to do it no matter what anybody tells you. But you have to put yourself out there, and you have to. And game writing is a whole other ball of wax, because it's a very competitive field that does not have any at all obvious entryway. At any given time, honestly, there's probably a handful of games being made in the world that require an intense amount of deep narrative writing. There are those games, but a lot of it comes from designers who happen to be writers also, and it's who it's who you don't know. That's why I advise writers, create your own games, do something that you can make yourself, that you can show people. You have to show people what you're doing. So you really have to produce and give a portfolio, so you can go to a game conference or somewhere, or send somebody. I mean, John Romero hired people for his company based on people sending him map designs, and that's a great thing. You do it yourself, and then you show other people. I mean, that's the game world is accessible that way. That's one good thing about it. It is easy to get to people. People can look at your stuff. So that would be my biggest advice is, put yourself out there. You have to do that as a start.
All right.
Wow.
Well, thank you for that because, yeah, like I definitely writing is something that even personally I would like to get into, and just it's nice to hear some concrete, just here's kind of what you should look at doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I hope it helps. I mean, like I said, I really have a lot of respect for anybody who does anything creatively, puts it out there, because it's really hard to do, and it's really brave. And there's a lot of people doing it. That's the other thing. There's an enormous amount of competition, and even more so now, where because of the nature of the internet, is that people are writing. I read so much great writing online. I mean, even just comments. I mean, to me, some of the greatest writing going on is just anonymous. As much as I don't like anonymous comments, sometimes they're brilliant. It can be some one pithy line that somebody writes somewhere in the world, and it's just it's like Mahatma Gandhi wrote it. I mean, you never know where the great writing is going to come from. And that's what's so cool about it.
All right, so we're going to move on to the fan questions now. Thanks everyone that submitted these in. We got a bunch. It was awesome to see people wanting to be so engaged, not only with our humble little show, but also just wanting to be engaged with the creators of this game and the people that did it. So we're going to start off with the question by Kevin H. What was your process? And you've kind of touched on this. But what was your process for developing believable dialogue for teenagers and choosing the slang and cultural references they used during Life is Strange?
Well, this is okay. Good question, Kevin. First off, you start with them as being characters more than teenagers. You start thinking, who are they? What do they? How would they talk? How would Max? Max is kind of not Max is kind of. She's a geek, and she's got kind of a really cool, shy, awkward confidence. And as much of a wallflower as she can be, she's also, she's not afraid. She's not totally afraid. She's actually pretty, gutsy, even from the beginning of the game, which I like, because it makes her character not so like, oh, she's just a simple wallflower who won't talk to anybody. She actually does engage. But she's still not, she's not there yet in terms of trusting in herself and her instincts. So you just start from the character, and then something like, I'll just give you an example, and something, when Max's camera breaks and she says, are you serial? And then Chloe says, I haven't heard that in a while. Now, yes, are you serial is not how people talk per se, but it is how some people say things. And in that case, because Max and Chloe have not been together for so long, since kids, Max is reverting to a kind of the way they used to talk. And that's why Chloe says, haven't heard that in a while. So that you have two things. One, you kind of establish Max's kind of like cute, adorable naivete. And then you have Chloe, reference that as a way of identifying that they have not actually seen each other in a long time. So, the language is all very intentional, and, and it's deliberate, and, and also the main thing is like, you're not trying to capture exactly how teenagers talk, because you can't, but you have to register the tenor of this era and this time, and you have to kind of create, somewhat of a believable, ambience around the language, and I love language, and I love writing dialogue, and characters don't talk the way, they do, but they talk the way they should in terms of the narrative. So you only have a few seconds, also 20 seconds, a minute to create a character. Like when you go up to talk to, say, Daniel, how you're going to say maybe one or two things to him, and he's going to respond once or twice. And excuse me, so you have to give Daniel some kind of immediacy to how people, think about him. Like with Chloe, if she says Hella, instantly that kind of, and, Chloe's the only person in the game that says that. It's not everybody says Hella, Chloe says that, and that defines her character. And because it's also a very common word in the West Coast and Northwest, it also makes sense that somebody would use it. And I was really, honestly, when I was one of the things that was fun about writing the game, I was really excited, like, oh, cool, I get to put the word hella in the game, and people who've never heard it are going to love it. or not. But it does define the character, or helps define the character. And, everybody in the team is always looking for these things to kind of define the characters, whether it's the artist coming up with clothes or it's the artist coming up with Hot Dog Man. I mean, you all have to come up with these kind of things to define and separate yourself from, because it's like, I'll give an example of Max walking up to looking for the can when she's trying to find the tools to open the door to the principal's office. So she goes to the can. Now, you could write, and if you're a game writer, your job is to come up with, 500 different ways of saying, oh, good, there's my soda can. So how do you do that? Do you have Max say, oh, there's my soda. Cool, here's my soda. There it is. Oh, my soda. My soda's arrived. What's fun, I mean, that you can have it, but that's kind of boring. And to create Max's character and to further her character, the way she views the world is kind of commenting on things in her own adorable way. So, of course, she would say, "Release the Kraken," and it's a totally horrible pun, and but it fits her character, and it's fun. It's just one moment, it's just one moment. A can's going to come down, and you've got to say something. So how make it fun and make it fit the character. I read somebody said online, like, oh, and Max says release the Kraken unironically. And I'm not really sure how you would say release the Kraken not ironically. The entire phrase is ironic. You just don't need to quote it, and I think that's the thing. The way people talk is they don't quote all of their irony or their slang. They don't let everybody know that they're, that they're being ironic or they're being meta or whatever, And so the trick is, once again, is just to kind of layer in this language without it being, hey, did you Snapchat on Instagram today? I mean, there's no references to Snapchat or things like that because there's the internet and there's social media, of course, but the thing is, like, I think the game is timeless because it takes place in this kind of it's in a world, and the game is trapped in time in a way. Arcadia Bay is indeed like an area trapped in time. So it's got a lo-fi 90s, 80s, late 90s aesthetic to it in a way, but then it's also still a modern environment, which would reflect a small town tucked away far from, bigger cities. So even like the character, like Joyce or the truckers, everybody, you just want to create enough distinctive dialogue so that the characters all stand out, and that's the major thing, is making the characters, each one, stand out. And the only way you can do that, is through how they act and what they say. So, throw a lot of darts at the Urban Dictionary and hope something works. No.
Kind of touching back to saying, when you talked about, Max says release a Kraken unironically, I'm speaking to about myself, but there's probably a lot of people out there who just actually started to say hella unironically from quoting the game, and then it somehow slipped into the actual vocabulary.
That is very true.
There's no better revenge, trust me. That pleases me greatly. And but I would also say, but once again, I would say, I mean, honestly, I hear hella probably 5 times every other day here. I mean, you'll hear it all the time. You go to a skate park and you'll want to poke your ears out because you're going to hear it all the time. And nobody uses it ironically. They're not using it. They use it because that's just a way of expressing a particular point of view. I mean, nobody thinks about, now I'm going to use the word hella ironically, And the other thing is that it's important to know about the language is that language is indigenous also to areas. I would never, they don't say hella as far as I know in Dublin. It's not a common expression, and probably not in London or Atlanta or in Greece or in Berlin. Just like I'm assuming that there are expressions that are indigenous to those places that I do not know and that others do not know. So language is also based on the geography and the landscape of where you're from. And so it's, not everybody's going to talk or sound exactly like all of your friends or the people that you know. And that's, once again, that's part of the fun too of writing, is trying to create all these different, styles of talking and writing and creating these characters. So, and then having people say hella is like the greatest, thing I can say. Having people who hated that word now say it, having it slip in their speech. Come on, that's great. That's hella awesome.
All right then.
Does that help?
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the day that Wowzer becomes a regular part of what I say.
It'll happen. What's the other ones? What do you use? Do you use hella? What else do you use?
I use Wowzer.
Okay, awesome.
Bae, B-A-E, bae.
Oh
like,
my God.
that's more so from a meta sense of like what the fandom was calling Chloe and all that.
Bae.
For sure. That is definitely the fandom's contribution. And I love the fandom has contributed to their own language, which is awesome.
That is now just a regular part. Like if someone is attractive in any way, if their personality is cute or anything like that, it's just like, oh my God, they're so bae. Like I feel so stupid saying that. 27-year-old man saying that. But.
That's great. And what's funny,
man.
is I personally never say hella. I mean, you will almost never ever hear me say hella. But you will hear it if you come out here, and it is a very common expression. And I love the fact that there was even dialogue discussions about that, because it's kind of the part, and I think this is also part of what's going on in gaming right now, is because there's so much new things. Games are changing and morphing and evolving, that a lot of what people perceive to be a certain way that games or stories or ways should be presented, they're coming out differently now. And so that's why I say that we're kind of approaching this point, of silent film to modern, gaming, where this next evolution is coming, which is storytelling and this diversity of point of view and this more accessible games for all sorts of different types of people, for whatever the type of game they want. So, I love that Life is Strange is kind of opening, and the dialogue, things like Oxenfree, the dialogue is awesome in Oxenfree, and Rana Pratchett with Tomb Raider. I mean, there's all sorts of wonderful, new waves of storytelling. And I think, once it becomes more common, people will start opening up to all the different ways you can present things that maybe have only been done in a few different, very few similar ways before. So. But it's hard to write. It is hard. Like I said, the trickiest thing is to simply, don't talk down to teenagers or young people. That's what I should say really, is that every writer, the most important tool for every writer and probably every artist, but particularly for writing, is to have a built-in bullshit detector. And that's what Ernest Hemingway said every writer needed, was a built-in bullshit detector. And you have to be able to, call out things and know things, and to be able to cut through things and hopefully detect when things are fake or false. Like I said, there's dialogue in films and stuff that we see in TV shows and media that doesn't ring true, and other stuff that rings true, and so it's subjective a lot of times too also, but I think the fun of it is just simply, trying to create characters and create within the worlds they're in. Life is Strange takes place in a very specific world, and the way that I would write for characters in Life is Strange is not at all the way I'd write for characters in one of my own scripts necessarily, because it's a different world and it's a different medium also. So.
So Kevin also wants to know, there's a lot of different opinions about Warren in the Life is Strange community. Some see him as an amazing guy and a great romantic interest for Max. Others see him as an annoying... Sorry?
It's okay. Your voice was kind of breaking up there. It's
right.
Becoming a little... Now I can hear you.
Okay, so there's a lot of different opinions about Warren in the Life is Strange community. Some see him as an amazing guy and a great romantic interest for Max. Others see him as an annoying doofus, while yet others suspect that Warren may have a secret dark side written for him, given the way he stalks Max. Send dark gauze films he calls hilarious, and his brutal beating on Nathan. What was the vision of Warren you were trying to cultivate? Were you trying to sow the seeds for multiple interpretations?
I have a feeling you wrote that one.
No.
Short answer, that's up to you. Next question. Well, that is going to be the variation of my answer, but there's, I love the discussions about Warren, and Warren, we all, the team, everybody, Michelle and Roll, we all had great talks about Warren and Alejandro and what does he mean and what does he represent. And the fact is that Warren is, I think he makes some people uncomfortable because he is who we were. Sometimes there's a little bit of Warren in all of us, sadly. And the good stuff of Warren, which is there, and I will say though that there's, maybe there's some overreach about Warren's, malevolence in the fact that, that is not a Photoshop picture of Warren with Max in that photo, and, Warren is not stalking Max either, and so I think that there's maybe a little bit of, like people want to, come down on Warren a little bit more than he deserves. And yes, he's awkward, and the films he sends, what's so funny about, Cannibal Holocaust, which is a, horrifying film, and I've never been able to get through it. But I know that people, I don't want to say love it, but it is a cult film. In fact, they just released a double Blu-ray set of Cannibal Holocaust. So that shows you, with a soundtrack, for God's sake. So this is stuff that's really part of the cultural, landscape, and certainly would be part of the language and dialogue if you're at an art college, you're watching everything. You're watching Casablanca and Cannibal Holocaust. You're watching Pulp Fiction, and you're watching Superbad, and you're watching everything. There's nothing that you're not. And frankly, the dark gore films that are gross, they don't hold a candle to what you can just click on any site and see. Honestly, and that people pass around links that I think are far more horrifying, of real tragedies than a Cannibal Holocaust film. But I think I think Warren has all these sides, and it's up to the player to, how he perceives Warren, and he can treat Warren however he perceives Warren to be, or he or she perceives Warren's actions to be. And so I think Warren represents that awkward nerd that we all knew in school or all were, but that we hope that we grow out of. And, but he is real that way. And I think, like I said, how do you feel about Warren? Do you like Warren?
Yes.
Yeah, Jess. How do you feel about Warren?
I was going to say, I want to save mine for last, but, well, it's funny because I always say this, but I used to be, I kind of am a Pricefield shipper. That's what you guys say. And I still am, but I don't know. My opinions on Warren have changed since I've played this game. So, I think it's just because I've matured over the months.
Right.
But I don't know. I personally like him, and I don't see a reason not to. But I do get what you guys mean. He's a little awkward, and he's Warren. I don't know how to explain it. But I don't know. I personally like him, and yeah. So.
Did you have him beat up, Nathan?
I originally did, because I'm a bad person. But yeah, I don't know if I were to play it again, I don't know if I would, because, we know what happens in the end, and we realize, it's not Nathan's fault, really. It is, but he was, used by Mr. Jefferson, and I feel like beating him up would just hurt him more. So I feel like, personally, if I were to go through it again, I would have him stop.
Right. Good for you. See, that's the empathetic point of view. But I understand why it's satisfying to have Warren pound Nathan,
mm-hmm. Because I'm just really, I think he's really cute too. So.
Aesthetic reasons. Good. Okay.
But yeah, what about you guys?
I'm my opinion. It depends on what day, what kind of mood I am on the day. It's either a good mood or it's like I can't stand him. But honestly, I'm indifferent. Like there's some parts of his personality that I like, that I can really relate to. Like all the references that he makes within the game. It's like someone recorded me just talking to myself and just put it in the game, because I make so many references to like science fiction movies, just day-to-day life.
Right, and that's cool. And I think Warren's good at representing that kind of, especially in art school where people, back when you're at college, I went to film school, so half your conversations are just filled with name dropping, whatever you're watching and referencing at the moment, or imbibing media wise. So, Joey, did you have Warren beat him up or not? Did you stop him?
No, I stopped him. I want to preface my opinion with Warren, saying that this question and your answer vindicates Warren really well. And especially with some of the fallout that we had for our Warren episode, this is kind of.
What did you have? I actually so I haven't listened to it yet. I got it on my queue, but I haven't listened to it. What was the fallout?
Well, we probably should have started by saying that we don't hate Warren and that we're going to make a lot of jokes at his expense. We said it at the end, and I think, especially considering with all the other characters, we've approached them with, almost, with the exception of Jefferson, almost nothing but adoration. And then we have the Warren episode, and we just kind of lay into him. So, for everybody that we made mad, and sorry,
it's like
Warren.
It's pretty much that episode is Blackwell Podcast presents the roast of Warren Graham.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Wouldn't that be great? Have all the characters come up and bag on Warren, or that would be awesome. That's such a good.
What?
That is a great. Samuel remembers when Warren dumped some trash.
Eaten alive by squirrels.
Poor Warren. He's the symbol for everybody in high school, that, was awkward, or that, didn't know how to navigate the social, milieu, and I think that is why people kind of tend to be the familiar, people can generally just not like him. That's totally fine. They can just not like him. That's the great thing about the game. That's a playable vision of the game. How you perceive these characters is how you act towards them. So, I like Warren because he's so many of us, in school in so many ways, and not always the best of us, but the game is about that. It's about both sides of people. It's not always about the best of us. It's about the human side of us, which is, is usually somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think with Warren, my official stance is the bad stuff with him just makes me cringe, because it was the bad stuff I did when I was 16, 17, 18, and so I don't hate him by any means. I do like to joke about him, but I don't hate him by any means. But one thing before we move on to the next question, I want to clear up if maybe we can get a definitive answer. Was he looking in Max's window?
God.
I won't give you a definitive answer because I cannot speak for the team. I cannot speak for anybody. My version of the answer would be, it's pretty apparent he's waiting for Max to come out of the dorm so we can ask her out to the movies. And there's, probably easier ways of him to spy on her than standing all the way across the building in the bright sunlight, So, it was more, it's a brilliant detail that they put in there. I love that, I didn't even notice that until I was playing.
Romantic.
But it's such a great little detail. I mean, the fact they put that in there is so fantastic because it just once again it opens up all these areas of discussion and interpretation. So that would be my answer.
All right. Well, moving on to the next question. Thomas wants to know, how were you able to capture the All-American style of a U.S. high school so well?
Well, Thomas, thank you for implying that we did capture the All-American milieu of a U.S. high school well. I've gone to U.S. high schools. I know what they're like. And I've been to art schools in the U.S., Berkeley, so I know what it's like. And everybody, on the team have been to school and art schools. And here's the thing about, I think one of the most amazing things about the way the game has cut across international and gender and all sorts of different borders with people is that the shock of recognition is that we all have been through school. And no matter how old you are or where you're at in your life, school sucks for a while. And it's really hard, especially high school, because you're going through so many changes, not just physical changes. You are going through physical changes, and then you're also going through intellectual, spiritual and non-spiritual changes. You're trying to figure out who you are. And then you've got to deal with kind of high school is like society macrocosmed. And what I always thought in high school was that high school was basically teaching you how society is after you get out, which is why I didn't like it. Because I was like, okay, so here's the bully, here's the picked on, here's this, here's that. I'm supposed to care about the big game. I'm supposed to care about this, So I think we all across the world, people relate to what it's like to be in school, in class, and not want to hear the teacher drone, and you have a crush on this person in front of you, or you're going to get picked on, or you're going to get bullied after class, so you don't have enough money for this, or there's all these things that go on. So I really think if you start from the guiding principle that high school sucks for people, and then you remember, and I had a pretty good experience in high school. I was not picked on. I was not bullied. I mean, they try to occasionally, but I don't like bullies, and I always stood up for myself. I was born with one hand, and so I learned very early on that society placed me a little bit in a different place as the other students. So in a way, you kind of have to get ready for that, and you have to be smarter than a lot of people around you, because they're not gonna treat you great, or they're gonna treat you less, and you have to let them know who you are. So my experience in school, I got along good. Plus, I was a writer and I was an artist. I did cartoons, so I was always drawing or writing stories or telling stories in class. So I was known as the artist in school. So and it was actually it worked out great, and not so much for some of my friends though. And I did see really horrible bullying, and I'll never forget it. And it's something that we all have seen or experienced. And I think that's the thing about like I said, language changes. You can't capture the way that teenagers talk at this day in 2016, but what you can capture is emotions. That's what is consistent. Shakespeare wrote the most famous love story between teenagers of all time. Shakespeare was in his late 30s, I believe, or early 40s when he wrote Romeo and Juliet, and it's still the most famous love story in history. And the language is, of course, completely archaic and not translatable to our setting, but the emotions of longing and desire and separation and class and race separation, those are all issues that last to this day. And that's why Shakespeare's plays are performed to this day, because what he captures in emotion is still valid. And I highly recommend Shakespeare, I should say, is also the biggest influence on my writing, because if you go back to Shakespeare, you will find memes and phrases that are being used today, and Shakespeare started them. The word yo is a common greeting in Shakespeare plays. And when I went to Berkeley and started saying Shakespeare, I was like, oh, that's so hilarious. They all say, yo, Romeo. And so you think, but it just shows you how fluid language is, and how something, not everything, new is actually new. So, I think one thing with the game of the high school setting is it's just trying to capture the social strata. And, the setting of Life is Strange, everything is, it's surrealized and it's exaggerated. I like to think that there's much more, I think in this era, there's far more kind of empathy and openness for young people than before. And it doesn't mean it's always that way, but I think people are much more, the discussions about bullying and, gender issues and race issues. These are things that are now very commonly discussed, whereas before in the past they would not have been, and they would not have been highlighted. So I think it's I actually have a lot more faith in the future of young people, because I think I have a lot of empathy, because every generation goes through its own problems. Every generation thinks that they've got the worst, and this horrible word millennials, which I absolutely hate and just will not use, because they're just people. The teenagers are people. Whatever generations they're from, they're just people, first off. So, but I think now there's so much pressure. The main thing about Life is Strange, of course, and that the designers want to touch on, is this whole social media presence, which leads and really exacerbates the bullying and amplifies it. I mean, when the game came out, and I'd watch a Twitch stream of the game, and some people were brutal on the game, and I had to read really, brutal things that they're saying about the writing or the game or whatever, and it's fine. I can laugh it off, but I can imagine if you're 15 or 16 and you're getting this from classmates, or they're setting out pictures of you or images, or that's an enormous amount of pressure to deal with. And I think that's the main thing about Life is Strange, is trying to capture the societal pressures, the technological pressures. And then still, and kids, teenagers, are still learning. They're still learning who they are, so, hopefully we did capture some of that. And like I said, it's not just a U.S. thing. The feelings, I mean, Michelle and Ron, these guys, they all, and Jean-Luc, wrote the story, and we've all been there. We've all known what it's like to be picked on, to be bullied, or to see somebody that way, or to, to have all these feelings. And so I think that's why the game translates, even to people that haven't been to a U.S. high school, understand the feelings of being young and going through changes. Hopefully that answers Thomas's question.
I think it did.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas.
Our next question from Connor is, how different is it writing for a choice-based game rather than a linear story?
Very simple answer. It's as different as reading it. The trick for writing choice-based, and I think this is why it's very hard for some people to write for the game industry, is that if you're writing, if somebody says, hey, what are you writing? I can't just give one answer. I've got to give 3 answers. And within each of those answers, you may branch off into 2 or 3 more other answers. So the trick with writing choice-based over linear, and it's and I've actually kind of discovered for me the secret to writing for a trick. And as a kid, I would write choose your own adventure books. I mean, I wrote those. I love writing choose your own adventure stories. I would do lots of that. And so that's really how I approached Life is Strange in a way. I wrote it this is like the greatest choose your own adventure book ever. And so these choices, then choices for writers and for and the designers, they've got to, come up with okay, where are we going to go with this? And the designers may have a certain idea for where they want the choices to go, and it's got to go to a certain point in the narrative. And so we've got to talk about this, and, so it's very, very intensive. But the trick is that, everything you write is going to be branched off into 2 or 3 or 4 different totally separate dialogues and ideas. So you have to be able to follow each one of those. And the trick basically for writing is simply, instead of being overwhelmed by the branches for this game are enormous. I mean, they are literally like forests of dialogue branches. They're kind of beautiful the way it's all laid out. So it's amazing, and writing them is, it's overwhelming. But it's fun because you get to basically every choice you look at as its own story. You don't worry about all the other choices you got to get to. Just worry about the one choice you're writing and get to the end of that, and then go to the next one that you have to riff off of. So that's one way, that's how you anyway. And that's the tricky part. Like I said, it's very, very, it's very difficult because you're doing not just one path. You're doing 6 or 7 or 3 or 4 or whatever that leads to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 more. So that's really the main difference.
Yeah, I really don't want to like simplify it, but it kind of reminds me of if you just like read like just a magazine saying like which character are you, and he says, are you like this, yes or no, and then it kind of branches off to that way.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of that in a weird kind of sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what it is. You're basically, except that you're just following that train of thought from yes to no, from yes all the way to where that ends, or no, and then you have to completely different character reactions. That's the other thing. And the animators, and the artists have to create, different, based on these choices. They have to, a whole other level of creation goes into it. So it's like a domino. Whatever you do leads to all the other things. That's why it's so, intensive with all the choices, and keeping track of all the choices too is a huge part of it too. Making sure that you're always keeping track of where your choices lead to and where they came from.
Okay, so our next question is from Kyle, who wants to know, when Max is on the plane with Principal Wells, there's a passenger across from them trying to figure out a crossword puzzle. She says, let's see, 10 across, 6 letters, blue. How the hell am I supposed to figure that out? They want to know what the correct answer for that was.
Well, Kyle, I will tell you that particular line of dialogue is simply my revenge against crossword puzzles. Because I'm very good at some puzzles, but crossword puzzles, ever since I was a kid, have always vexed me, and I do not understand them, Sam. I just simply cannot do them. And so my favorite thing is like basically like, this is why they drive me crazy. You'll get a crossword puzzle and it'll say three down, 7 letters, tree. Okay. Let me look this next one. It's 6 across, 5 letters, bark. And I'm done. I am done. So I have no desire to figure out what these blank letters, why blue connects to them. It's just too frustrating for me. So that was just my little, and I love watching people, my friends who are so into crossword puzzles. It's so hilarious. They'll be like, and I love words, they'll make fun of me. They're like, you're the writer, boy. I'm like, I know, but what's blue 10 across 6 letters? I don't know. So that was just a little fun little crossword puzzle zinger right there. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, so moving along here. So Giovanni wants to know, did you expect that Life is Strange would have such a huge impact on the players?
I will be honest and say to a degree. I'm certain there's no way and Alejandro touched on this last week. No, certainly not. Was not aware of all of how the emotional response and the fandom, the amazing fandom that would spring from this. But I'll be honest. I mean, the second that I got the game, the second that I saw what it was going to be, the second that I saw the menu, I knew it was going to be a hit. I mean, that's totally regardless of my involvement in the game. I just knew what this game was important. And I was, and I would always tell people this game is going to, do well. I mean, it's going to hit. It should, it's going to open up all these doors to people that are waiting for a game like this, and I'm very grateful that, that the fans did respond and that they did feel the same way about the game. But I felt very confident in a way that I usually am not also. It's not the kind of thing that I would predict, but I just really felt like, because I just knew the timing for this game was important. I was like, that's why I was so excited about working on it, because like this game is going to come out at the exact right time. You've got the controversy about Gamergate. You've got all sorts of, all these diversity issues, and harassment issues and all these things going on in the game world. And so I just saw that, oftentimes things are a matter of, talent and timing equal luck. And that's actually the prescription for success in a lot of ways, is being there at the right time. Some things don't come out at the right time. Some things are ahead of their time. And, and Life is Strange is of its time. And it's not often that you have that moment. It's like Star Wars, when Star Wars came out, that every studio. I know. Here we go. We're getting Star Wars. So, every studio in town turned down Star Wars, and nobody understood it. And all of the marketing literally said, science fiction is not popular. We will not make science fiction movies because our marketing shows that nobody likes these movies. And, one studio took the chance, and without that happening, we wouldn't have Star Wars. And that's pretty amazing, but it's, and so many studios, of course, many publishing companies passed on Life is Strange. And, Square Enix, had the vision and didn't demand any, said get rid of all the stuff. They were willing to take on the game as it was. And that took a lot of boldness and vision, and as it did for Don't Nod to make the game, to come up with the game. So I was expecting to have an impact, and I hoped it would, and I hoped that I would be able to not blow it with the writing, and that people would respond. But there's so much, like I said, there's so much amazing things about the game and the acting and the style and the feeling from the game. And so I was certainly not prepared for I remember the first time I honestly went to Tumblr after the game came out, and about a month after the game came out, just to see the Life is Strange. And I think I started at 1 a.m, and by 6 a.m, I had to go to bed. And plus I was crying. I mean, honestly, it was just reading people's words and seeing their amazing artwork and all the inspiration and the music and just the outpouring of affection for the game, and it was so overwhelming to me. It was actually overwhelming to me, and I think I can't only speak for me and my team, but certainly for the team to have the fans embrace the game in this way. And every fandom is wonderful. Every fandom has got its own nature. Doctor Who fans are one way. Every fandom has got its own style. And and like I said, I can't speak for the other fandom, but I can only speak that the Life is Strange fandom is amazeballs. I mean, it's just utterly it truly is like endearing to me, and I feel very protective. And I know I think we all feel that way. We're very protective of the fans, and also very grateful, and have this relationship, with it's just the artwork blows me away. I mean, I'm like people are just creating the most amazing artwork, for this. I mean, that's what really, is amazing, is how people are just it's opening up all these avenues for their creativity, and they're sharing it, and it's truly amazing. So that was, but I knew the first night of the game, when the game first dropped on Friday. And I was watching a lot of people twitching the game and live streaming it, and I did say by 10 o'clock at night, I quietly said to myself, "It's a hit. It's going to be a hit." And and just not because I'm awesome, and I figured I just could see that people were responding to the game in the way that I think we all hoped that they would, and right. Like I said, you don't always get that. I don't know what it's like I wrote for Deus Ex and other things, but you don't always get to be a part of something that comes out and has an impact on people. And that's, that to me is the greatest thing about the game and working on it, is just seeing people. The best tribute for me is like when people send me pictures of them in class drawing Chloe or Max, or writing Hella or something, or butterflies, and I love the fact that they're in class ignoring the teacher. But you know what? That's where I started. That's exactly how I got to write Life is Strange, because I was in a classroom doodling, ignoring the teacher. It doesn't mean you should ignore the teacher all the time, but you have to. I love the fact that people have embraced the game in this really emotional way and diverse way, and I love that the discussions that it's open for all these issues. So thanks for that question, Giovanni.
I will add that this fandom is the best fandom. I will gladly defend that.
Yeah, I would say that, but I'm biased for sure, but I think it is. I can't. I mean, it truly is like every fandom is wonderful and unique in its own way and has its own style. But the Life is Strange fandom is what I know, and it's just amazing to me.
Our next question is by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Lush. He asks, there is no arguing that the writing in this game is amazing, yet I guess that as an author, there are always some parts of your work you are not totally happy with. Can you share your thoughts on some?
Actually, no. Everything is perfect in the game, and there's nothing I would change. And everything I do, frankly, is I'm totally happy with everything I write. I mean, this is the thing is that there's what my favorite expression is when it comes to the work that you do, and your thoughts on it afterwards is it's an expression. Art is abandoned. It's not finished. And which means that you can always go back and want to change things or rework things or go back and do things differently. And there's no artist that doesn't look at something they've done and think, geez, I can, or even John Lennon, probably not a good idea for me to quote John Lennon, considering Mr. Jefferson, but John Lennon, did say like every time he hears a Beatles song, all he hears is everything he wants to change on the song. It's like, yeah, okay, change a Beatle, a day in the life. What do you want to change, John? But as an artist and everybody, you always want to do your best, and if and you always feel like you could do more. But there's also a point where you have to say it is what it is, and right. Sometimes by going too much into something, you can actually ruin what it is. And one of Jack Kerouac has the rules for, one of his rules is, first thought, best thought, which is often like when the first thing you write down is often the best thing you're going to write down. Now, it doesn't mean it's perfectly phrased and you can tweak it and you can work on the ground or whatever, but often, that's usually going to be your best thing. And sometimes but then sometimes you can start from one place and keep working through something till you really get to an amazing other place. So it's, like I said, everything, I'll look back on what I've done. There's things I would like to change. But there's also lots of things that I watch Life is Strange and I'll listen to some of the conversations and I just get this totally dopey smile on my face because I'm like, wow, the actors are nailing it. It's all working. The cinematography is great and, it sounds great. And it's exactly what, we intended the scene to be, and there's some things, based on, the thing about the game, you're always against deadlines. You're always in Hollywood in the game and everything. It's deadline, so the deadlines are brutal. They really are. And so you don't have the time that you always want to finesse everything, but sometimes that's actually works in favor of things, because sometimes when you have to just do it fast and do it now, you get more creative. And that's, like I said, about the lo-fi thing. You don't have the option of time or money. So you have to find other avenues of being clever. And that actually does, pay off. But ultimately, like I said, art is abandoned, not finished. And you can always go back over. But then you'll be George Lucas and tinkering with Star Wars forever. And you don't want to do that. You want to move.
No.
No, you don't.
You don't want Rita to shoot first.
Oh, man.
Okay, so our next question is from Brighton, and he wants to know, are there any video games you could chalk up as your favorites?
Hello, Brighton. Brighton. And there's so many games. I'm very old school, so I have no problem. Like, I love booting up my little Donkey Kong and playing Donkey Kong on the computer. And then I'll play, I just finished Oxenfree, which was amazing. And I'm going to, Michelle highly recommended Firewatch, which I'm going to get to next. But like I said, I love, I'm old school. I'll still play Quake, and Aliens vs. Predators is one of my favorite, it was when it was multiplayer. Final Fantasy VII, just because of the emotional, sensibilities of it. Red Dead Redemption, BioShock. I think Half-Life 2 is it's one of the greatest games ever made that I don't get tired of revisiting. Alien Isolation I thought was amazing because I'm a huge Alien fan, and I thought the game captured beautifully the ambience of the film. Gone Home I thought was amazing just because of what it was doing, what it was trying to do, and the new formatting for kind of storytelling it was setting up. Last of Us was super cool. Resident Evil, I'll play every Resident Evil game when it comes out. Like I said, nothing makes me happier than cutting zombies' heads off. I just love it. So, and I'm a huge, speaking of Star Wars, I love Star Wars Rogue Squadron too. It's one of my favorite. My favorite. I love flying X-wing. I love flying games. So to me, they really nailed the sensibility of flying Star Wars ships, better than any game so far. And I'm going to play The Witcher next, one thing, I've been so busy writing. I mean, you really don't have time to play games as much as you want to, because it does, I like to, when I play a game, I get very serious about it. Because it's too easy for me to play like I'm going to just play GTA for a little bit. I want to run over some people. No, okay, get back to, but, I really try to give each game like I want to go from beginning to end, like in binge play, is what I like to do. Mm-hmm. So, that does take a lot of time. So I've been able to catch up on games. And Life is Strange, which is a great game too.
Absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. So, the last question is from Derek. I think that's how you say their name. And this is the question that we always ask at the end of our interviews. And it is Bae, B-A-E, or Bay, B-A-Y.
Okay, well, I'll never tell. No, my answer to that is I like to do it. I did the Kobayashi Maru version of Life is Strange, which is the Star Trek II test that Kirk takes in Star Trek II, and he cheats. So basically, to me, there's two timelines. There's a timeline where I have to let Chloe go, to fulfill that particular pattern of destiny. And then there's another timeline I play where Max and Chloe drive off together. Because I like to think, my personal, opine is that you can imagine all of these time streams that Max is open, right? So I like to think that there's probably all these different alternate timelines that will be ongoing. So that, in my need to have Max and Chloe happy and have Joyce alive and everybody, there can be two different timelines. And so it's hard though. I mean, you don't want to make that decision in the game. You don't want to have to do either, but that's the best answer I can give you. I couldn't stand to have Chloe, to have Joyce and Max lose Chloe, but I couldn't have, the town be wiped out either though. So I cheated and I did both versions. So that's my answer.
All right.
It's both.
All right.
Because I remember I actually came up with a third ending where you turn off the console and just pretend that everyone had a happy ending.
That's actually probably the best ending of all. Like, stop the game right before and just create your own headcanon so you don't have to worry. Like, okay, cool, it's over. The adventure's over. But I love the fact that we had a lot of discussions too, of course, about, what would be the percentage of people that would choose, so there was a lot of betting about the percentages of who would choose what. And it was amazing how equal it pretty much came out to.
And then that's the end of the fan questions then.
Right.
So we want to thank everybody for sending their questions in, and we apologize if we weren't able to use your questions. But I think it's time to move on to the Everyday Hero segment.
Yay!
Mm-hmm.
Okay then, to those who are unfamiliar with what Everyday Heroes is, it's a segment that we like to have towards the end of the show where we just appreciate what the community has created, whether it be cosplays, fan art, music, videos. It can be anything really, as long as the community create it. We'll probably showcase it in the future. So Joey, what would you like to showcase this week?
Well, first, before I talk about my winner, I want to say that if you are listening to the audio only version of this, now that we're available on iTunes and we have RSS feed and we're on SoundCloud, you can find all of this artwork that we talk about on our website, blackwellpodcast.com. So if you're kind of confused, if you're just tuning in and you're like, okay, well, obviously I can't see these images because I'm listening to you over iTunes or what have you, that's where you can find these images. We are gonna leave it in the audio only versions, just because I want all of our versions to be able for us to showcase and talk about this great artwork. So that being said, my choice is by Chapter Doof with 3 O's on Tumblr. It's actually part of a set, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil. But I chose the See No Evil, which is with Chloe. The set is amazing. I highly recommend that you look at all of them. I think the thing that really stood out to me first is the style that these images were done in, kind of this like charcoal type style, is very, very reminiscent of a lot of the photography artwork that you see at the Zeitgeist Gallery, and even some of, dare I say, some of Jefferson's work has, like, I just love the kind of darkness to it, I guess, and some of Nathan's work that we see in the game, and it's just, all of it is just fantastically designed and done. I love the monochrome, with the exception of the butterfly, and then even the butterfly being a subdued blue. I absolutely love that contrast between black and white, and then having one particular point of thing in color. So this all 3 images are extremely, extremely well done, and especially this Chloe one.
Yeah, I mean, I love the any art piece that I see. I always love the expression in the eyes, because I can't remember who said it, but they said the eye is the most expressive part of the human body.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just clearly see this in this image. It's just well done. The shading's done excellently. I mean, it's great.
And is that a glare, like the Life is Strange, like near the head, or is that just my computer?
No, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I think that's really a nice touch as well.
Which is, we're talking about the kind of like reddish, dark reddish streak on
Orange.
Chloe's hoodie. Oh, not hoodie, beanie.
Yeah.
Beanie.
I can see a bit of green on the other there as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But yeah, I love this too. I love the monochromatic and like style, and how like it's just, the contrast is really nice, like the dark background compared to the face, and it definitely, when I opened this up, I was like, whoa, like I was just immediately drawn into that. So phenomenal job. And yeah.
That's a beautiful piece. And I love the way that the butterfly is tilted sideways to match the profile, to go along with the profile.
Right.
Jess.
All right. So the piece that I chose this week, it's called Max is Strange by Zombie138, and it on DeviantArt. And I really chose this piece because the colors, they really like stuck out to me, and the pinks, like the pink background really captures Max's personality here, and it kind of shows like how her like color is pink, like like her Jane Doe t-shirt. And I really love how they decided to draw her in Chloe's room as well. And I also really love how she's holding her camera. So yeah, that's really why I chose it. I also really like the style. It has its own style, but you can also tell exactly who it is by looking at it. So that's why I chose that.
Yeah, I love this piece because I love Max's, I think it totally captures Max's shy, awkward confidence in kind of her pose, and the lighting is really lovely, and there's even, it looks like a little glimpse of maybe Hot Dog Man back there. It's a little eye glimpse if you can see that. always watching. But I love the the pose and the look on her face. It's really, the art is this is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, go on, Jerry. Sorry.
Yeah. So thanks for submitting this, Zombie. That to kind of caveat, I guess, maybe even just pair it with the background is it looks like it's from the game. Like, Edward Kaplan has a very, like, I probably butchered that name, but he has a very, with his concept art and stuff that you see, he had like kind of the finger paint style, like the surreal, just the blurred edges, kind of smudge looking type thing, but it still presents a lot of detail. I feel like that background was like excellent at recreating that style. And then, you have just, it's almost three-dimensional in a way, and I say three-dimensional not in like it sticks out or anything, like it pops out or anything, but like in the sense that you have like a depth of field, you have a depth of focus on it, which is another thing that the game captures really well. You have max in focus here, and then you have almost like the bokeh effect of the background that Life is Strange has with the background, and like I love that. I just like it captures it. It captures the game really well.
Yeah, the lighting is fantastic and totally duplicates the style of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I may be going crazy, but I also think it's using the rule of thirds as well.
Oh no,
It seems
definitely.
that. Yeah.
I was like, is it? And then I just kind of had to like do the hand movements of the lines splitting up the picture, and I was like, yeah, it does it. I just also love the detail, like like even all the posters in the background and the graffiti on the wall, the flag. Just you can definitely tell it's Chloe's room. Just
Absolutely.
great piece. Just love seeing art in the community. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, what about you?
All right then. So the piece that I chose is a Max and Chloe cosplay by Emmy Knightley and Megan Eldall on Twitter. And yeah, just looking at it, I'm just in awe. It's like I remember seeing like Emmy Knightley tweet out she was doing a cosplay stream, and I just clicked it, seen her cosplay, and was like, wow, I've got to mention this on the show. And it said, basically asked permission. She said, yeah, sure, and sent me this picture with the Chloe cosplay, and I was like, wow, okay.
Wait, so which one's which? Do you know?
Emmy Knightley is the Max, and Megan is Chloe.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know where to begin with this. Just, oh boy, I just love it so much. I'm just huge cosplay freak, and if I see really good cosplays, I just stare and I'm just in awe.
Yeah, that's the funnest thing too, is when I go to some conventions, and I mean the greatest thing is to see the cosplay from the game, Max and Chloe, or somebody doing Jefferson or Warren. I mean, it's so amazing. And that's like, once again, such a great tribute to the game, and people are so amazing, and their photographs and the way they set them up, they really, I mean, they're just all little pieces of art. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I love on Megan's jeans. She also got the patches that Chloe has, as well as the necklace.
Yeah.
And even with, I see some cosplayers don't tend to have the right shade of blue for Chloe's hair, and they've pretty much hit the nail on the head with this, as well as Emily with the right shade of hair that Max has.
Right.
The thing that I like about cosplays is when cosplayers, I guess the thing that like sets it above and beyond in my opinion with cosplayers is when they, when they're posing for pictures or when they're doing the videos or what have you, they try to be in the character. They try to capture the personality of the character, as opposed to it just being, them putting on a costume, which is fine. But for me, it's like the extra mile that they go through. And so, Amy kind of captures this, the adorkableness to use, Christian, what you said, of Max, and then Megan like has more of the more like in your face style. I guess confidence, for lack of a better word. Aggressiveness, maybe. So you kind of see that, even though this is just one image, you kind of see that. So I really appreciated that as well.
And kind of putting the two together, it's if you just look at them together, you kind of can tell that the characters that they're portraying have been friends for quite a while as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
I love how they did the background too. Like, I know it's so simple and everything, but you can tell they definitely like thought it out, because of, like, they look like professionals, you know. I don't know. I wanted to point that out.
Yep, they did a great job. It's centered great. The backdrop is Cyclorama is nice and distinguished against the background, and it's so much of the cosplay photos too are just amazing. I mean, like I said, it's just so many. I get really like overwhelmed, honestly, when I see so much talent out there. You know how many talented people are out there working on these things.
Right.
So
that wraps up Everyday Heroes, right?
Right. So thank you, Chapter Doof. Thank you for the submission, Zombie, and thank you, Emmy and Megan. I want to give a quick shout out. If you like Life is Strange fan art, you want to kind of have a nice little hub to go to that. You want to. There's I believe his name is Chris. He's done quite the undertaking of creating lifeisstrangefans.com, which is almost a social media. I think that's what he's wanting to kind of create, this like social media style hub. Forums, a nice little amalgamation of all that's available. So I want to give a shout out to him for that as well. Just a little mention. So check that out, lifeisstrangefans.com. Christian, wow, I think it must be like, I don't know, a prerequisite of working on Life is Strange that you just have to be an awesome person. And you were true to the rules. So
keep believing that. I thank you. I hope so. Because the people that working on it are awesome. So thank you for saying that.
But thank you so much for being on the show. Your answers were just mind blowing. So thanks for taking the time out.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for your hard work, and it's really amazing. Once again, I'm just always truly touched by the fan base. I mean, it is like I said, I feel very incredibly lucky right now in my life, because I'm part of this amazing game and this amazing fan base, and it's wonderful to be part of something that actually like I said, to be part of a piece of art, and this game is art, and have it touch people in a way you don't always get that. And so when it happens, you're doubly grateful and doubly pleased. So it's thank you guys for all your passion.
Right.
Okay, so to wrap up, we are going to quickly touch about what next week is going to be. And it is the very first of our community guests that we are bringing onto the show. And that is Taylor Chan, who is a Life is Strange cosplayer who has done a handful of Life is Strange cosplays and is an admirable fan of the game. So it'll be really good to talk to her about her experience about playing it, as well as talking about cosplays.
So look forward to that next week. Thank you so much for listening to it, Christian. Again, thank you so much for being here. If you're new to Blackwell Podcast, make sure you subscribe to us, like us. If you got something you want to say, write in the comments. The only thing that I will say is, be most excellent to one another, and don't be jerks. It's fine. It's fine to have different opinions, but just make sure to keep it civil. And so far, everybody's doing a really good job of that. So that's all we got for Blackwell Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll see everybody next week.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.